Welcome back to another episode of Capital H, live from Provider Day at Deloitte University. The event just ended. There was a tremendous amount of energy over the last day and a half of folks coming from all over the country, some folks from all over the globe and all over the provider ecosystem. And I'm thrilled to be sitting down now with two of our human capital leaders to share some insights and perspectives about what we heard over the last couple of days for all those folks who weren't here or all of those organizations out there who leverage these providers in driving the business and human outcomes in your respective organizations. Nicole, would you like to start by introducing yourself to folks?
Sure. Nicole Patterson. I lead our workforce transformation business here at Deloitte, and our practice partners with business and talent leaders around really aligning their workforce strategies and workforce effectiveness to their broader business strategy. So if you think up and down the talent life cycle, all the way upstream from workforce planning to then talent acquisition and developing your workforce, engaging them, workforce experience, rewarding those individuals, as well as things broader around future of work and the impact of AI.
Yeah. And Nicole, and I think what we'll dig into shortly, from a workforce transformation perspective, a lot of these providers, organizations need to deliberately be thinking about those providers are part of their workforce, right? They're not on the balance sheet per se, but they are part of the workforce getting the work done, right? So we'll dig into that. Jonathan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Kyle. Great to be here. Jonathan Pearce. I lead our Insights, Innovation, and Operate business in Human Capital, which is a business, as you can expect, that's focused on, we say operate. What it really means is getting in the boat with our clients and helping them run parts of their business, parts of their functions, and adopt all the capabilities that technology is bringing them faster and bring insights to them from across our research eminence that we do, as well as our analytics platforms, data lakes, and everything. A lot of what we do in IIO is about bringing the capabilities of providers to our clients and helping our clients get the most out of the providers' platforms that they're using. So this is an awesome event for me to be at.
Absolutely. Well, and to your point, and we'll dig into it some more, the fact that it is truly that better together mindset when we're operating or bringing insights to our clients across the ecosystem. And that's what drives the business value for our collective clients. So I want to start with maybe a little bit of, for folks, awareness. Provider Day, this is the 11th year we've done it. It's a one-of-a-kind event at Deloitte University. I think the only kind in the market where we actually, as a collective provider ecosystem to our clients, get together and talk about what are the trends we see in the market, what's shaping the future of business or the future of functions, future of work, right? And how do we collectively understand those trends to then drive the business value for our organizations. So Jonathan, I'll start with you because as the insights leader, I'm sure you're going to share some insights with us.
Way to raise the bar.
Yeah, always keeping the bar high. What are two or the three of the things that you shared with the providers that you're seeing out in the market that you think are shaping not only our business, but our customers' business that folks who are part of our Capital H audience need to be aware of?
Couple of things. One is that our clients, what I hear from talking to clients is that there is so much innovation, so much new capability, especially with AI and the way that AI is evolving faster than I feel like any other previous tech revolution that we've been through, and that every provider and every platform is putting forward new capabilities at an incredible rate. And clients want to take advantage of it. At the same time, it's confusing. You want to get on a path that's going to get you to the best longer-term outcome at the same time as you want to take advantage of immediate opportunities in the short term. And they're asking for help putting the pieces together and putting some kind of strategic roadmap together. For us, I think that's an opportunity to help our clients because we understand the ecosystem. And as we work with our ecosystem of providers, it's an opportunity to get them to collaborate better and actually help us put the pieces together in ways that are going to have the biggest impact for clients. So that's one. And then the other is that more and more our clients are asking us to help them not just do projects to transform, but to get in the boat with them and help them run parts of their functions, like I said. And for us, that's the ability to bring not only our strategic perspective on an HR function or a workforce function, but also bring in the implementation capabilities we have, as well as our perspective on the vendor ecosystem to put all the pieces together and then run it with our clients. And that's one of the things I'm most excited about.
Yeah. Well, and Jonathan, the first thing you said actually ties to one of the human capital trends that our colleague David Mallon highlighted to the providers around new tech, new work, where 4 or 5 years ago, folks might have a small set of technology providers and a certain amount of features coming out, and they could kind of figure out the roadmap. Now you got hundreds of providers releasing new AI and automation use cases on a daily basis, and companies are like overwhelmed. Which ones do I use? Why do I use them? Where do I use them? How do I roll them out, right? And our team that runs this event introduced this concept of the +1. Hey, folks, don't bring 6 of your own salespeople to a client or 6 of your own customer success people. Show up together so that you can help the customers stitch together the roadmap in a way that drives those outcomes.
It's so important because I think HR as a function in particular has been one of the first functions to get into the cloud. I think most of our clients are on HCM platforms that are cloud-based. But all of a sudden, it's like, well, I didn't used to think about who my cloud provider was and what do they bring in terms of agentic opportunities and using the cloud services. And then there's this massive proliferation of AI-driven new capabilities in recruiting or in learning or in rewards. And how do I put the pieces together with my core platform and my cloud provider and make it all work together for the best outcomes without duplicating the spend that I have on all of that. That's the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, and because you said agentic, which was actually, for folks' awareness, the number one requested topic by the providers coming into the event to talk about, Nicole, I'd kind of love your take on how this conversation fits into that broader workforce discussion. Because what have we seen over the last several years? It's been how do companies think about workforce strategy, and it's not only the singular person I've hired into my company. For a while, it's been, okay, how do I think about contingent or part-time or a third-party operate organization? And now today, it's also a question of the machine. Is it an agentic AI? And how do we onboard them, train them, manage them, et cetera? Are they a teammate? Are they an FTE? What do we call them? So you want to share some of, how the conversation's evolving on the workforce strategy front?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are getting a lot of these big philosophical questions as the proliferation of AI and as we move to agentic AI. And by the way, I'll say physical AI. So some of the providers we had here were really pushing the envelope around thinking about our frontline workforce and the tremendous opportunities there in healthcare and logistics and manufacturing.
Yeah.
And something that hasn't been as much part of the conversation until CES and some of these other forums have been really bringing that to the fore for that whole other part of the workforce.
Yeah.
So much of the dialogue that we hear in the media and in the press, and often from our clients too, are these big philosophical questions around what does this mean for the future of the human in the workforce and what skills more broadly are they going to need and who's going to manage the agents and how do we think about all of that? I would say we're also hearing a lot of practical questions from our clients who are thinking about the near and midterm around the impacts to their workforce and some real-time decisions they have to make now around do I still need to hire product engineers at the same rate that I was hiring them, a couple of years ago? What does this mean for, my university hiring program? What does this mean for my GCCs and the changing work that's happening there? And so it was interesting to hear from our providers in the last couple of days around them thinking about the impacts across the talent lifecycle as they think about the digital worker interfacing with and converging with the human worker, right? There was this term around convergence, that they are not separate side by side, but really this human-machine mix and how you look at your workforce more broadly. And so from a workforce planning perspective, the build, buy, borrow, bot question, the bot keeps expanding, right? From just augmenting to truly taking on, especially as we look at multi-agent systems, like whole components of processes and how that changes the fundamental work. All the way through the talent lifecycle. So from workforce planning to then how does that change our learning? We had some folks here who do compensation benchmarking. And so how does that impact, rewards programs? So it really is going to take a village, so to speak, up and down the ecosystem to really think about how we respond to this on a real-time basis.
I really love that point. To me, there's this mindset shift between thinking about technology as platforms that work is done on top of to now integrated with the workers doing work together. And one of the most interesting conversations I feel like was happening over the last 24 hours was about the way you design, as you said, a system of humans and technology can definitely have impacts for efficiency, for differentiation, for what you're trying to achieve for customers or whatever. But there are also real impacts on the workforce. The way you design that system can increase the skills that you are trying to build for the future, or
Yeah.
it can degrade the skills you're trying to build for the future.
Yep.
It can increase a sense of accountability and ownership for innovation and creativity, or it can decrease that sense of agency and ownership, increase engagement by workers, or it can really decrease engagement by workers. All of those considerations about how you design that system, I think, are really important for human capitalists to take a leadership position
Yeah.
on in conjunction with the engineers who are designing all of those agents and bots.
Absolutely. Just because you can automate, does that mean you should each component? And where is that human
Yeah.
component not only necessary, but also valuable in terms of the long-term sustainability of the organization?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Nicole, that can you automate? Should you automate? That was one of the tensions at the heart of our 2025 Global Human Capital Trends report that was all around it's not an either or, it's an and both. There are things that you could or should automate, and you're doing that to augment the humans, right? But then, Jonathan, some of what you just shared is also getting at the crux of how do the providers also help organizations have the message around how are you doing this and using this technology, whatever it may be for, to drive empowerment of the people or augmenting their skills or more accountability, right? Because some of the other data that we found in our 2025 Human Capital Trends report is that 40% of workers spend their time on non-value added tasks. 40% of manager time is administrative tasks and firefighting, problem solving, right? Like time and expense, travel, performance management, learning course approvals, you name it, right? And what would the world look like if you took some of that innovation and really unlocked that worker capacity to do things differently? And then that even gets back into the workforce strategy conversation of like, as I unlock all this capacity of the people to do new and exciting things, wow, where could we go?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I know the concept of
Yeah.
Slack that we've talked about in the human capital trends, right? And that is, we've talked about the value of AI, not just being on efficiency and productivity, right? But how do you actually change the experience? How do you create exponential business outcomes and improvements, right? And so that connection, that power to be able to unlock the human potential to drive improved business outcomes, it can't just be automation and technology enablement. It needs to be a cohesive, broader strategy.
Right. Yeah. Well, and Jonathan and Nicole, to give maybe a little flavor for folks' awareness, the types of providers here, Nicole, you started with it, right? There are folks who are here who do nothing but compensation data benchmarking and surveys, compensation surveys, to large HCM or talent intelligence, implementers who are working for large global companies, to humanoid robotics organizations, to skills platforms. So all sorts of things, which really gets to the breadth of the business issues organizations are trying to solve from a complexity perspective. And so, Jonathan, I'll maybe go back to you with, as you think about some of those business challenges that you noted from a year ahead perspective, and as you kind of noted also the challenges for companies who now have to think about, wow, there's a lot of change that my providers are putting out there. What's an easy starting point that you would give folks to say, this is why you should think about how you engage your providers differently to drive the business outcomes and organizations trying to achieve?
Yeah, great question. The starting point to me has to be where you ended, outcomes. What is the outcome I'm trying to drive? I think there can be a mentality right now that there is so much opportunity to gain efficiencies with AI, but I'd say some of the outcomes so far are a little disappointing from what we had hoped or expected. I think part of that is not enough consideration about how do you more intentionally design the system that Nicole was talking about earlier. That takes, I think, deciding where in your organization you want to start to do that more holistic redesign. And that redesign is going to take not only engineering something with a set of technologies, but it's going to take redefining what is this work going to be for humans in the future, and how do we design it so that we have the skills to deploy against it, so that we have the governance and risk management around it, so that we have the adoption of whatever the technology capability is. I don't think that you can do that enterprise-wide all at once. I feel like you need to take a bit of a targeted approach of analyzing where is the opportunity, whether it's for efficiency or for better differentiation for customer outcomes, better competitiveness, and then take a design approach that includes both technology architecture and a workforce architecture. I think this idea about re-engineering work and workforce, these are the new skills of human capitalists that are going to come to the fore. And this great partnership between workforce engineering and technology engineering is going to be critical to success. But you have to do that intentionally.
Yeah. And I think every single provider in the room, regardless of the category that they would play in, would acknowledge that with their customers, turning on a platform alone never delivers the full outcome, right? The business outcome an organization is trying to drive.
Well, and I think every platform provider I talked to here talked about the fact that even though they, and some of them are the most successful platforms in their space with many, many, many clients and great penetration, but that their clients are not getting the most out of their platforms.
Right.
And that's even before we layer on all the potential of agents and AI.
Yeah. And so, Nicole, in that context, I'd love to hear maybe a little bit of perspective for, as you look forward, and maybe you even challenge out to the providers, how should organizations be thinking about what become some of those new roles or new things into the future relative to, as you know, as Jonathan noted, start to re-engineer the technology, systems thinking approach, re-engineer the workforce? Where might some of those exciting opportunities lay for people who are maybe a little anxious for then this time of disruption and change? And where is the AI and automation being deployed in my organization? Yet there's so much potential to do new and different things. So any kind of perspectives or insights that you've had on a couple of opportunities folks should be, thinking about?
Thank you for the question, Kyle. Jonathan talked about the importance of looking at this really in a holistic systems perspective. And I'll share a stat that we talked about yesterday from our State of Gen AI report, which is that 78% of executives say they're going to spend more on AI in the coming years, but only 40% of organizations are actually even starting to see the value from the investments that they've already made, right? But the money is continuing to come because it is such a systemic opportunity. This is going to be a multi-year effort.
Absolutely.
It's going to take a while to really see the impacts.
Yeah.
And it's really an opportunity, again, to truly re-engineer and reimagine. We talked about the difference here. This isn't just transformation.
Right.
This is full reimagination.
Right.
An example, I mentioned the humanoids earlier, and we had a discussion around the impact that physical AI can have on one of our most critical workforce segments in our society, which are nurses, which we know we already had an acute talent shortage.
Yep.
Nurses are, they do so much important work and they are so burdened right now.
Right.
And we want them to be focused on patient care and bedside attention. And right now they spend a lot of their time, walking up and down halls and getting medicine and so there's such an opportunity to help strip some of those tasks off of nurses so that they can truly focus on areas that are most important. And I think that's just an example of where if we look through our various workforce segments across industries, where can we pull some of that non-essential time? And so we've been really focused on working with our sectors to understand how can we apply AI to workforce segments that are at the heart of the business.
Yeah.
And if we do that, in a way that is taking the systems approach that you mentioned, Jonathan, that's where we're really going to see the value. That's impactful not just for our people and also for our businesses, and in many of these areas also for society.
Yeah.
That really resonates with me, and I couldn't agree more. And at the same time, I know that people listening to this podcast will say, well, yeah, but I have to deliver something that produces results in the next quarter. And how am I going to do that with systems thinking and engineering skill sets that I don't even have? I don't think there's an easy answer to that question, but I will say that I think there are some real opportunities to pick some low-hanging fruit things. And probably it is looking at the platforms and what some of the platforms that you have are bringing to the table in terms of work augmentation capabilities and trying to drive adoption of those things quickly. I also think something else to think about is where you've got those kind of constraints, like you talked about nursing and the constraints in that workforce. Can you do something in those workforces that are constrained and stretched that opens up your ability to take advantage of the efficiencies that can come from some of these low-hanging fruit tech applications? And so we're talking a lot to clients about how can you stop thinking about defining roles really narrowly in terms of a set of responsibilities and taking a group of roles into more of a delivery pool and thinking more about how can you do work allocation a bit more flexibly. Those kind of things will let you take advantage of some of the efficiencies that you can get from some of these low-hanging fruit things, even as you take on the challenge of designing systems for the future.
Yes. Love that.
Nicole and Jonathan, the conversation that we just had about flexible work allocation requires really understanding those workforce segments, which becomes more critical to this provider ecosystem to understand, hey, I can't just offer a platform that is broad peanut butter across every industry, right? And we've seen over the years many more companies who've gotten industry or sector-specific verticals or use cases specifically targeted at, I only serve healthcare or I only serve retail, right? So I think it's really telling that to truly drive those business outcomes, you got to know the company, you got to know the workforce segment and the business outcomes and human outcomes that organizations are trying to tie there. So thank you both for sharing the insights. I know this has been kind of rapid fire and we're still digesting what we just left an hour ago, right? So more insights to come as we get home and sleep and take a weekend to process some things. But any final thoughts either of you would like to share from a Provider Day perspective?
Maybe one thing. I first want to appreciate the providers that come to Provider Day. It's a forum that we provide to bring all of these, what are often competitors, together. And yes, it's for us to share with them and for them to share with us so that we can bring all of that perspective to clients together. But what I was impressed by was the way providers are sharing with each other, even if they are in some ways competitors. But how can they bring the strengths of what they have to try and simplify this journey for clients? And I really want to thank them all for that vulnerability to do that with each other and with us, with the collective commitment to try and drive human capital as an industry or a segment or a capability in the marketplace in a positive direction so that we can get not only these efficiency outcomes and things we've been talking about, but better human outcomes. That to me is the promise of the future of work. And I think everybody who was here the last 24 hours is committed to that.
Absolutely. And I think that is the ultimate end goal. When an organization hires a provider, any provider, what do they want? They want to drive that organization's goals. And so it is so critical when you are one of a number serving a company. Sure, you've got your own business objectives, but what matters? The client that hired you. So working together and talking together ultimately to drive those client outcomes. Well, Nicole, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us on the Capital H podcast live at Deloitte University at the end of an incredibly energetic 36 hours at Provider Day. For those who were listening, I hope you took some great insights away. Reach out to the team who was responsible for putting it on. We're happy to connect and share more. And if you are a provider listening to this who has been before but wasn't here this year and want to come back, reach out. If you're a provider who's not been before and would like to think about coming in the future, also reach out. Stay tuned for more insights from Capital H. Thanks again.
This podcast is produced by Deloitte. The views and opinions expressed by podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Deloitte. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice or services of any kind. For additional information about Deloitte, please go to deloitte.com/about.